And so, beloved masters, discernment. It is an absolute imperative. It is a necessity in these times. And the understanding, the recognition of the energetic feel in your soul center between the essence of discernment and the essence of judgment. Discernment is a centered recognition of the comfort, the power, the clarity of the next step. People say, I don't know if I can trust this person. But discernment allows you to go beyond all the outer trappings of judgment. Judgment focuses on how they look, on the words they say, they, whomever is being judged, rather than how those words feel. Judgment will lump one person into a whole group of people and accuse all of them, all of a certain race, all of a certain class of people, all rich, all poor. And it is, dearly beloved masters, so much of the chaos that's occurring on the planet in this time stems from that limit of the mind that just judges. And it cuts anyone and everyone that is not in an acceptable frame out of the picture of life, where discernment listens, not just with the physical ear, but discernment listens with that inner hearing, that inner ear that feels for nuances. For example, someone may be a very good talker, very adept with words, and yet if you feel into the energy, you may begin to sense that there is an attempt to control, to force you into a certain direction. Very often, if you are in the market to buy an item and you are with a specific salesperson, and they may be saying the right words, but it doesn't feel good because there is a feeling of being pushed, of being cornered, of being controlled. Judgment may get angry and react. Discernment allows you to listen to what the salesperson has to say but still to feel within yourself about your own personal resonance to the situation. You're looking for a specific kind of vehicle, and you find a vehicle that feels good, you like the look of it, you sat in it, it's comfortable, and yet the pressure of a salesperson could, if you are relying on judgment, cause you to simply turn around and walk away from something that personally, between you and that item, is absolutely a fit. And yet the pressure from outer sources can be such a turn-off that you may totally step away. Judgment is reactive. And more than ever in these times, judgment is based on some foundation of fear. Snobbery has been an element all through the illusion that the ego mind has created. And yet, snobbery, the rejection of those that are inappropriate in some manner, whether it is how they dress, how they look, how they talk, their level of education, their level of finance. But that snobbery is founded on fear. The fear that, quote, if I let someone who is not of my ilk, whatever the judgments may be, into my life, then suddenly I'm pushed to be much more discerning because I have stepped outside of the closed walls of my judgments, what I was taught, that you don't become involved with those kinds of people. And Spirit doesn't have any consideration about the differences in people. It is the discernment of each soul that actually provides a great deal more protection, safety, security, solidarity in these times than all the judgments in the world. Human law is based on judgment. The judge has a rules book, the books of law, the tombs of justice, and once the entity moves through law school, many times those tombs are not opened again. But there are the judgments. And so, a body of the peers of someone who is being tried in court come to pass judgment. And even though the mind says you must be very objective. Emotions get involved in the situation, what the entity is supposed to have done, or which side of the tracks they came from. Or, as it is showing up more and more as revelation is shining its light, how much money do they have to purchase their place in society will overrule discernment, clarity, and very often judgment as reality is dawning, as revelation is coming clearer. Judgment is really not friendly. It isn't friendly to those that are being judged, but it isn't friendly to those that are judging either, because if you are judging someone, here he goes, he's going to harp on that finger thing. Yes, if you're pointing at someone, there are three pointing back at you. If you're judging others, then you stand thrice accused in those places where you are not comfortable with yourself. So really considering when judgment comes up, what am I going to be called to review in myself that will stem from this accusation against someone else, especially if there is a hint of an idea that the accusation may not really be true, and yet personal choice, free will, is to decide that someone is guilty until they're proved innocent, rather than the other way around. Discernment comes from the depths of your own spiritual wisdom. Discernment has access to vast reservoirs of energy, of knowledge, every experience you've ever had, every thought you've ever entertained or acted on, everything you've learned, either in the school of life or from some institution of learning, everything that you have experienced is stored in your cellular memory. Discernment accesses information so much quicker than any computer available on the planet in this time. Even though computers are accessing information more and more rapidly, discernment can access the required information in a heartbeat. But it doesn't have to slow down and go through your brain, asking permission to consider if this is accurate, like judgment does. Discernment shows you by a feeling, energetic impulses that assist you as you are willing to know thyself. Discernment assists you to much better process the affairs of your life, to make wise choices rather than snap judgments. Judgment is a tool of control. Discernment is a very important element in the master's toolbox of virtues. It is a very positive, very powerful, very protective energy, but it's not defensive as judgment is. Discernment has absolutely no necessity to fight a battle or argue over what has been discovered. And judgment must argue, sometimes for hours, sometimes even days. When someone decides to go on a filibuster, whether it is in the House or the Senate of the United States, or whether it is in a personal debate with another person, and the filibuster can go on for a long, long time, sometimes years. So, judgment can drag things out, can fight for power over, can seek to control, and discernment quietly, lovingly, and actually, beloved masters, so much more powerfully than judgment, discernment can show you the wisest choice. And discernment does not seek to take away your free will. Where judgment may attempt to corner you, to shame you, or to threaten you about the decision that you've made, where discernment has no necessity to make a defense, give an excuse, or to explain why. Because discernment feels clear. It feels solid. Discernment doesn't go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It stands with what it recommends. And if discernment missed something, and there is new information that comes to light that calls for a reconsideration of what was discerned in the beginning, Discernment is not ashamed, afraid, embarrassed to say, I didn't have all the facts. And discernment is not afraid to redirect. Where judgment will stand its ground, even if there is a body of proof that says that judgment is inappropriate, judgment will still stand and argue for its point, no matter what. Discernment is a necessity for the collective consciousness to consider. And so many things that humanity has been taught through lifetimes, through generations, families that have been raised in a particular part of the country or in a particular country may have a viewpoint on how life is and or should be that is based on the small body of understanding that living in one place can support. That is why the understanding that traveling outside of the confines of what you have been told, and traveling may not be getting in a vehicle or flying in a plane or taking a boat somewhere. It may be research, it may be reading many books and considering perspectives that have come from those that stand objectively outside of very local, very personal situations. Discernment can take all of those factors into consideration. And it doesn't mean that everyone that has been raised in a small area is going to lack discernment. It simply means that very often the finite mind encourages a dependency on local law. The stories that have been passed down through generations, and that's just how it is. Discernment can step back and move into the places of compassionate objectivity. Discernment inspires you to stand strong with what feels, not a reaction, what feels appropriate. And that feeling of something being true is not tainted with the ego's need to have it be that way. The ego is not nearly as concerned about what is true as how to present the situation so that I may get the desired effect. And so often that leads to a fear, an uncertainty, a sense of instability. My foundations are not solid. That brings the entity to fear, that brings them to war. And discernment, very much like love and truth, does not operate in a battle zone. Because discernment is about healing. And judgment very often is about the chaos of destruction. And yet like attracts like. So if judgment says we must annihilate the enemy, then everyone who is the enemy gets included in the judgment, including self. Discernment seeks the highest good of all concerned, including self. And when your focus in each situation of your life is about achieving the highest and best outcome, the most peaceful, the most fulfilling, the most prosperous outcome for all concerned. And when that is the intention, it changes the energy of the situation altogether. Judgment is full of heat. And judgment is very reactive. Judgment wants to go in and finish off the situation so we don't have to deal with it any longer. Discernment seeks for a path that will bring the greatest benefit to all. And the finite mind says it is impossible for everyone to be happy in a situation. And certainly we would not argue that at all. Because the choice of each individual involved in any situation, from two people who become engaged in a conflict, and then those two people go out, and if they're operating in judgment, they began to seek to gather people that will stand on their side. Discernment is so clear, confident, and confidence, beloved masters, isn't arrogant, it isn't pompous, it doesn't need to brag. In fact, discernment may mean that you recognize within yourself, from the Lord God of your being, there is absolutely no necessity to have to talk about this over and over and over with others. Discernment is so calm, so clear within self, not righteous, but comfortable. And discernment is patient, because that feeling of clarity, of faith, of truth can wait for all of the dust of the judgments, the conflicts and the chaos to settle, where judgment operates in the fear that if things are not done quickly, the tide may turn. There may be new information, there may be a different perspective that is brought to light. So judgment needs things to operate fast, quickly. And discernment can, in compassionate objectivity, simply observe how things come out.